Welcome, welcome to the Danbury Dems. My name is John Gogliettino. I'm your host. We're going to be talking as part of our series of candidates running for office. We're going to be talking to another zoning candidate tonight. I'm going to have Henry introduce himself. Henry, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Henry Hall. I'm running for Zoning Commission. I've lived in Danbury since the early 1980s. I've worked at Putnam Precision Products, I've worked at Guidepost, I've worked at Fortune 500 companies as a computer programmer. At WorldCom, my work was patented. I did a lot of work. I worked for a decade at United Health, GE Capital. I did mobile home financing and real estate mortgage investment conduit processing. And I'm married, I have 3 children, and live in Danbury, and I want to give back to the community that's been so good to us.
Okay, very good. So you've seen the world and you're still in Danbury.
I've seen the world, I'm still in Danbury, and I'm in Danbury, as far as I know, for the duration.
So you want to give back to the community, and is there anything particular that possessed you to go for zoning?
Well, I ran for zoning in 2011, actually. That was my first campaign, and I came up a little short. And that really gave me the bug for politics.
Okay.
So I've run a few other campaigns since then with a little bit of a hiatus in between. But zoning is...
I want to make a point to the audience, and that is that you normally do our directing.
Yes, I normally do the directing. I'm semi-retired now, so I have time to do community work.
Okay.
And
very good.
And I do a lot of directing here.
Okay.
So, but zoning is going to be interesting. Zoning has an amazing amount of work to do with the city. It can be even more powerful at times than the city council, because once a building is up, it's up.
Right.
Once a traffic decision is made, it's made. So it's decisions are permanent. So one really has to be careful with thinking about the impact of your decisions, not just short term but long term. And short term thinking is what's got Danbury into its difficulties today with the unregulated development.
Like the unregulated development on the west side.
On the west side, but not only on the west side, on the east side as well. And we're rapidly getting to the point where the city is going to be condos and apartments, because right now there are very few single-family houses being built. So we want to try to preserve the character of Danbury and have smart growth.
Right. So what was going on the west side? It's glaring to me because I pass through there a lot. You have a number of restaurants and businesses and shopping centers, and they weren't linked in, so you don't have like a common driveway, so that you have a light, and you don't have people coming out of 4 different driveways,
right?
Which is what you have,
right?
In many cases, up and down Mill Plain Road.
Yes.
So is there some way of fixing that now, or what you're saying is that shouldn't happen? That's an example of unsmart growth.
It's an example of not too well planned growth.
Yeah. It wasn't the smartest growth.
No, it's not. It's not the smartest growth, and we're paying the price for it with traffic on Mill Plain Road as well as the 84. And meanwhile, downtown is still languishing, and apartments galore and condos galore on the east side as well. So,
now, what would you do? There's been like apartments proposed on Main Street. How would you look at that? You may look at that, and then again, I'm not sure if that decision was already made. Well, from my chair, I'm not sure.
Well, we have to take everything as it shows up, as it applies. We can't have any pre-existing, what's the word? I'm drawing a blank on the word here, biases against a particular development. But we have to weigh the advantages of the development, the disadvantages of the development, and the long-term impact on the city itself.
So that hasn't, as far as you know, that hasn't been decided yet.
As far as I know, that has yet to be decided.
Oh, okay, so you really shouldn't talk on that. Okay.
We can't really talk.
Excuse me.
on individual things, but zoning does big things and zoning does little things.
Right.
Zoning does, yeah, please.
One of the things that we talked about with other candidates is, how traffic has been running through the neighborhoods, but we weren't necessarily talking about traffic in the Danbury police and what they were showing, as opposed to people are trying to get around the congestion that was caused by bad zoning decisions.
Right.
They crowded roads like the North Street Shopping Center, and that's been alleviated a bit, but you got problems there, just like you have on Mill Plain Road, and as like you said on the east side also, there's a lot of traffic in those corridors.
Right, and as Danbury grows, we have to manage the traffic a lot better, which means we have to manage zoning better. And the general city plan has to change as well.
How long has it been since the last city plan was done? It's like over 10 years.
It's over 10 years old, as far as I know. I haven't seen anything more recent. But for those of you who don't really know what zoning does, zoning is the reason why there's not a slaughterhouse next to your house. Zoning tries to protect property values, and zoning also tries to isolate businesses into fairly equivalent areas. So businesses are categorized as commercial, heavy industrial, light industrial, etc. And within those, there are very different subdivisions and subgrades. A lot of it is based on how much land is being used, whether it's a quarter-acre lot or an acre lot or 2 acre, or as far as commercial, whether you're on an arterial road or not. So there's a lot of technical stuff going on.
And then there's also some modernizing of the code.
Yes.
That there's a lot of home-based businesses that can't operate as home-based business because zoning says you're supposed to have a separate office, and that increases their cost.
Right.
So for those businesses, maybe you should look at, can this business operate out of its house, especially if it's got minimal traffic?
Yeah.
Those are the kind of things that probably haven't been done and should be looked at.
Right. I was looking at those regulations this morning, and they were very specific about the businesses you could run out of a home, and it really did deal with visits to the house and traffic going in and the types of businesses that were there. Basically, it's any one-person operation and anything that's just one-person operations, but you still should go out and get a permit to run your business there. Right. But it can get modernized a bit.
So you have it in the code that you don't have to have a storefront for some of these things.
Right, for some of these things. You can sell insurance out of the house if you need to, but you can't run a restaurant out of your catering business or something,
or a butcher shop out of the kitchen,
Right, or a warehouse out of your garage.
Out of your garage, exactly.
Yeah. And you can't mine in Danbury. There's no mining allowed. No mining allowed in the city, except for excavation and normal grading stuff.
Yeah, and that you need a permit.
And you need the permit. It's generally part of another project.
Right.
So that's the deal with zoning. Zoning deals with.
Tell us a little bit about zoning, because we should have started with that, but of course my mind was wandering about what you were going to say next, and I didn't want to stop you. There's 9 members of zoning, right? And a couple of alternates?
9 members of the commission are elected every 2 years, as well as 3 alternates.
Okay.
And the commission meets generally twice a month.
On Tuesdays?
On Tuesdays.
Okay. And that's for those that may want to attend one of the meetings.
Yeah. And the agendas are put out on the city website ahead of time, and the minutes get produced a little while later on whatever schedule they get produced on. And the meetings.
Have you gone to?
I've gone to several meetings over the years.
Okay.
The meetings can last well into the night if there are any contentious issues, and
It sounds so easy. A couple of nights.
Yeah, I know.
But then it could be continued.
It's only one night a month. It's only 2 nights a month.
Those are the legislated ones. It's filed that way. But
Right.
you can continue the sessions on one into the 2 days later or whatever.
Right. Right. And zoning is really a thankless task in many cases, because any decision you make is going to get somebody angry. If you say yes to a project, well, people who don't like it are going to get mad. And if you say no, well, you can be accused of being a sellout or a communist or whatever.
Right.
But so the people who are on zoning, and I want to make this clear, the people who are on zoning, no matter the party, are volunteers. They're spending their own time. They're not getting paid for it. It's just volunteer work. And you have to salute anybody who does community service as a volunteer.
That's true.
We can have our differences on what's appropriate for the city,
right.
But we have to understand that we have to work together, and everybody's in the same boat, working toward the same goals of a good Danbury. We just think we can do it a little bit better.
Yeah. And somebody that never had a bar next door, but he's on the fringe of the commercial zone, he might be eligible to have that bar next door, which he never had there.
Right.
So he may not like what you guys do, but it might be allowable because that's the edge of the zoning, where the commercial zone starts.
Right.
So you have commercial zones, you have residential zones.
There are industrial zones.
Industrial, yeah. Okay.
And then it gets kind of fun. You have these things called overlays, which are zones on top of zones. You can have residential neighborhoods close to an airport, but the airport has an overlay on it because you have approach zones, so buildings can only be so high during an
well, you don't want the plane to run into the building.
No, you don't want the plane to run into the building, which is why at the mall you're going to see even the street lights on the mall parking lot are much shorter when you're at the runway of the airport than they are at the other end of the mall.
I would imagine that'd be the case to make sure that planes don't run into the light poles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But
the things you need to know about zoning.
Right. And we were talking earlier about zoning. Zoning, big and small. Zoning, you can do your whole plan development, like was done in the early 2000s up on the hill next door to me, which is still being built out today.
Yeah.
Or it can be very, very small issues, such as in the meeting they had recently, which is discussing a zoning change on Down Street affecting 2 properties. So it can be big or small. And even on that small requested zoning change, there wasn't a consensus. The zoning change, I believe, was denied, but it was like a 6-3 vote. So there's lots of room for opinions, lots of room for...
That's a significant vote. It's not like it was a 5-4 decision.
No, it's not like a 5-4 decision, but it wasn't 9-0.
Yeah.
So you've got that.
And the people can come to these things.
Oh,
right?
yes, it's all open to the public. There are public hearings scheduled for everything that goes into zoning, be it zoning changes.
Not so much on residential, right? It's mainly on commercial and.
It's mainly on commercial and well, because it's mainly commercial properties that people want to change uses on.
Commercial and industrial.
Commercial and industrial. Yeah.
But if you were going to put a garage, I guess. A commercial garage in the back of your house because your property abuts, like you said, what do they call that word?
Abuts the abuts a watershed.
No, you use another word for it.
The protected wetlands.
No, the overlay.
Oh, the overlay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Overlay,
in other words, you're residential, but you're right on the industrial zone or something. And so you want to put a small warehouse in the back of your house and run it into. Well, I would imagine it might be, but that's not really zoning. Is that is that ZBA or is that something else?
It could be ZBA, or it could be this particular issue, whatever we're talking about.
Yeah, well,
is this
residential too? I'm sure that there's been things like that.
Where was my train of thought? Zoning has uses that are allowed. Some uses are written into the ordinances as just regular allowed uses, such as residential stuff. But other uses need special permits, such as a liquor license.
Right.
Because zoning actually does liquor licenses here in Danbury, and it also controls, to some extent, the storage of construction equipment.
Really?
Yes.
That I didn't know.
Yeah, it's there in the zoning.
It's probably because
documents.
of all of these overlays.
It's because yeah.
Yeah.
And Danbury zoning is full of overlays as well. You've got your city center overlays and the overlays for watersheds, which is why you don't really want gas stations next to Lake Kenosha.
No.
So there are restrictions on what businesses can be watershed districts.
Years ago, they actually they were trying to put a gas plant on Lake Kenosha.
Really?
Didn't make it because public hearing, the public spoke, and they went away. They withdrew their application, but it was there. little things that the public, if it speaks,
Right.
people go away.
Right. Now, zoning decisions can really impact the community. They can impact the community in a beneficial way or in a not so beneficial way. It affects them. It affects just traffic. It doesn't affect just traffic. It affects schools. It affects your property taxes. It affects the ability to sell your house. So
Yeah,
it has to be done well.
You might have to sell it for $100,000 less because something's being done.
Right.
If it's being done the wrong way, then people aren't going to want to live there.
Right.
So you don't lose anything if you're not going anywhere, but you may not want to live there and find out that now it's $100,000 less.
Or 50,000 or whatever.
Yeah, whatever that may be. So it's a very interesting field, then you would say, right?
It's interesting. It's diverse because you have your hands in a lot of different things.
Is there some examples of other things that have been done that shouldn't have been done in your? I mean, they're done now, so we could talk about them.
Take a look at Comcast House. Oops, Comcast. Oh no, I mentioned Comcast House up on Topstone.
Okay.
And if you just walk by it or drive by it, you'll see that it's just something that does not really fit in the neighborhood. It's a neighborhood of nice, really, really nice houses, and then you have a house with a tower sticking out of it 75 feet with turkey vultures hanging on it.
Yeah, well, maybe they needed that for broadcasting.
They needed it for broadcasting, and it's on top of a hill, and that's a good place for it. But
right.
But once again, it interferes with the residents and their enjoyment of their own property.
Yeah,
so it affects their property values.
But that's part of government. The government says, well, everybody should have something like Comcast, not necessarily endorsing Comcast.
Yeah, right.
But that's we're just being facetious here. But
right.
In order to have that operation, you need that broadcast tower.
Yes, you do.
And many other broadcast towers for telephone have been proposed. And many have been turned down, but many have gone through, mainly because people have to have the reception.
Exactly. And there is a whole section in the zoning regulations about telecommunication and towers and things like that.
Where it's going to be allowed and where it's not going to be allowed,
and what it has to look like.
Right. So they don't allow it on residential houses, but they do allow it on churches and schools
and some other commercial buildings
and commercial telephone poles.
Yeah, and a lot of it has, and I believe a lot of it is special exceptions on the zoning, or a special use that you have to actually apply for and go through public hearings and all that. So
the public knows about it because of the venue of public hearings.
Yes.
It's noticed
as well as they're advertised.
It's noticed in the newspaper, and then people go to
show up in the meetings.
And the meetings, and they run from. And everybody really has a shot
Yeah.
And they can't say no. They got to run until everybody's spoken.
Right. You gotta go until everybody's spoken. You may not get your way. You're not going to get your way all the time. But you have to trust in the process. You have to trust that the process is open and fair and transparent. That's really all you can hope for. Because you're not gonna get everything you want all the time.
Right.
So that's the thing with zoning. It's a big responsibility, and I think I'm up for it.
All right. Well, very good. Now, what do you, I was alluding to some of the things that happened. There was that downtown proposal to put a casino inside of
the off-track betting.
That sort of thing. I don't know because I didn't go to the hearing. Did you go to that hearing?
No, I didn't go to that hearing. I was
so whether or not there was a lot of people there.
Occupied.
Yeah. But I think the results on that was that if they wanted to go ahead with some certain stipulations, that they could go ahead, but then they didn't like the stipulations.
No, they didn't like the stipulations. They may come back at a future date with a modified plan.
Yeah.
Which is their right.
They're right, because they own that property or they got that deal, but they didn't go forward at that time.
It didn't go forward in that time because mainly because of the public outcry, and the public can make a difference.
Right. So you always. Why don't I have the public give you a shout at this point in time?
All right.
What's the best, your telephone number, if you want to give your telephone number? I didn't ask you this before. Okay. Your email, you don't have a website.
No, I don't have a website,
but you have an email.
But I'm on the Danbury Democrats website.
Oh, okay.
Which is danburydemocrats.com. You'll find a lot of resources there. You'll find videos. You'll find bios of all our candidates.
And yours.
And mine, as well as mine.
And then your telephone number?
My phone number is 203-788-3369. 203-788-3369. And I'll be happy to talk with anybody about zoning.
All right.
Okay.
Well, they just flashed me. We got 5 minutes, so maybe we'll
that went fast.
Yes,
yes,
time goes by.
Yes,
but,
it does.
But we still have some other things to talk about. We can't talk about something about the future, but was there something else that if you could correct or whatever? There's been taking of commercial land and turning it into residential land. And the purpose it was commercial was twofold. One, to bring jobs in rather than just more residents, and then the other, that you get a better tax off of that land.
Right.
If you're turning it into residential, you're going to miss out on that. What's your thinking on that whole scenario that I just highlighted?
Well, the property owners, the developers, they try to maximize their profit, which is fine, and they also try to respond to the changes in the economy and changes in the city. Now, our commercial space is, frankly, overbuilt in my opinion. We have lots of empty buildings, and so
you're of the thinking that some of it could be developed.
Some of it could be developed into residential, like they want to do with the Matrix. They want to put in a couple of hundred apartments there, I think, instead of making it commercial, as it has been. But, that has consequences. It has consequences in our schools, for instance. We're what, 3 weeks into the school system, and we've got a financial crisis on our hands on that.
Because there's too many students versus what we had planned.
Right. What was planned.
And it's always nice to have proper planning, but if the plan is flawed to begin with, you don't have enough to cover because it costs so much a student.
Right.
And that's one of the consequences of improper zoning.
Yes, it is. And if the schools are overcrowded, that affects your property values.
Right.
So a zoning commissioner will have to think long and hard about what's best for the city, both short-term and long-term.
So you're maximizing your profit, but you got to
Yeah.
say, well, maybe we'll maximize it by having over 50, as opposed to having something.
Or possibly, such as the ideas that have come up fairly recently, such as having the developers contribute a little bit. You don't wanna-
Contribute to the
contribute to
expanding the school, or
contribute to the costs to the community.
Yeah,
Instead of just getting tax breaks, you say let's throw in some money to help pay for schools,
Roadways,
and
schools.
schools stuff. Not that the developers need to do that in perpetuity.
No,
but
initially
to
have that developed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
that's something that zoning can put
that
into
is
the deal,
something.
right? They can write that into the deal when they approve it, or is that subsequent?
That would.
You don't really.
Zoning just says, yeah, you can do it. Once zoning approves, whatever gets built gets built. I mean, we found that out with the
so
Crosby Street development a few years ago.
You have to have that in.
Yeah.
As part of the deal. Otherwise,
Yeah, you have to have it in.
It probably won't be done.
Or it won't be done. If it isn't on paper, it ain't happening.
Right. So anyway, they just flashed me the 1 minute to go. Why don't we give your telephone number and the website one more time?
It's DanburyDemocrats.com, and my phone number, should you want to talk to me, 203-788-3369.
All right, very good.
Okay.
We've only got 10 seconds for a closing remark. Come out and vote.
Get out and vote.
Okay.
It's a civic duty. Get out and vote.
I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, John, for having me.
You're welcome. I want to thank the viewers for tuning in to Danbury Democrats. See you next week.